please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be continuing the discussion from yesterday concerning Synnibear. Giving their explanation video enough time and room to breathe, you get a greater scope of the audience perspective. The comments are resoundingly against them. You will also find the like-to-dislike has gotten wider, in favour of dislikes. I wonder if they'll learn their lesson or really dig their heels in here. Then again, even if they did learn their lesson, there is no coming back. They can try though. Let's see what else they have to say on this subject though. I should insert, yesterday we covered 1 minute 50 of the 30+ minute video. We're going to try and make some more headway within the segment that is earlier timestamped in her video concerning Enno and the grooming allegations. Because this video is broken up into parts, which in and of itself is an umbrella for a single part of a multi-part video that they intend to release. They should have released these individually. That would have made more sense. But at the same time, what they see within it doesn't help. So actually, it doesn't matter how they made the... I'm gonna start the video now.
Now that I'm having to sit alone with my thoughts for the first time in a really long time, I've been able to reflect on everything. And I've realized that I was very misled by Birdie on many things regarding psychology and psychology-related subjects.
But not optics. See, psychology and psychology-related subjects don't account for the social perspective. That's social sciences. The trends and patterns of society as a whole. It also doesn't account for the fact that you still did something that, even with hindsight, you should have never done to begin with. This isn't complicated. You are trying to make it seem complicated to deflect and distract.
I looked to Birdie for any and all information on these subjects because it was their, quote, special interest, and I figured he'd at least know more than the average dumbass. But I've started to realize that the answers he gave me on mental health subjects depended almost entirely on what was most convenient for Birdie.
So we are going to delve into this part because you talk about it and it fascinates me. But I do want to go into it highlighting that this is one massive deflection. And it will always be that. There are 2 Google Docs out there now on you, both of which quite conclusively show a pattern of behaviour. You can have some interest in psychiatry, psychology, whatever if you wish. Hell, psychic gifts if you want. The pattern of behaviour becomes quite prominent, prevalent, obvious. You are deflecting though, because you were coerced into an apology of some kind.
Here are some actual qualifiers for what constitutes as grooming, as is listed by a simple Google search. Isolation of the child, building the child's trust, inappropriate communication, which includes asking for secrets to be kept, and using sexual language that the child may not understand, and educating the child on the subject, buying gifts, giving the child special attention, singling out the child to make them feel more mature, special, or different from other children, showing particular interest in the child, victim selection, and substance misuse.
Yesterday I was quite clear on not wanting to use the term grooming to describe what had happened. Because you are right, by definition, the words do not constitute your actions included as that term. Sharing sexually explicit material, though, with a minor is something else. Even if it is artistic, it still falls within the realm of S.abuse, because the young person can be harmed mentally significantly. Therefore, what you did may not be under definition of the term grooming, be that anyway, but it still falls within an umbrella term for something else. The message logs, the screenshots from Discord that show you talking about sex, yeah, no, none of it helps. I did state yesterday you can't convey tone in message. This is where that comes to bite you on the ass.
I did not isolate Enno. Enno was actually already isolated when they first met me.
I don't think that helps you in the way you think it might. I can understand at the age of 14 the desperation of many young people, and I say this from experience, wanting to have friends. So we seek them out. When I was 14, the internet and things like Discord, Skype, Twitter, Facebook, social media as a whole wasn't as readily available. It was harder. It really was. That does not justify permitting a minor into your community to then in their presence talk about sex, to talk about your art which had sex in it, and GRAPE, gonna say it like that now, fantasies, in art form. You shared it.
Enno has told me directly that they only ever speak to like 3 people, that being Sophia the Neko, me, and another person I don't know. I never got jealous if they hung out with other people instead of me. I never told them who they could and could not hang out with. I didn't want to control who they were hanging out with. I wouldn't get upset if they didn't talk to me. The only thing I can think of that probably looked like I did is if I said something in their DMs and they took forever to respond, I would get anxious and think that I upset them somehow. I do that to everyone though. I'm just really anxious. I don't like the idea of bothering people.
You'd get bothered when a minor didn't respond to you? Interesting.
Building the child's trust. I don't think I was ever even interested in building their trust.
Over 2 documents, 300 pages of Google Docs, building trust is a key, fundamental, vital part of any community, whether ignorance or not. You still were building their trust, not necessarily to groom them, of course, but you still were building their trust as a part of your community. I'm going to be pedantic on that, but many will still think you are a groomer, regardless.
The only thing I was ever really concerned about was making them upset or uncomfortable. In fact, it already kind of seemed like they just automatically trusted me with a lot. I didn't really have to do anything on that front.
Yes, young impressionable mind talking to somebody they're a fan of, like-minded to an extent. Try to imagine my shock that when one is vulnerable and alone, they would want to spend time with those that are willing to make an effort to be around them. You're not helping yourself here, you know that, right? You must be aware of this. The way you speak is as if you are trying to downplay, but you don't realize just how dense it comes across. Patronizing too, I might add. I appreciate that you put message logs on the screen to make your point. The problem with this is, and it's an overarching point, at no point should you have ever been messaging a minor, ever.
Even then, it was just never on the forefront of my mind. Inappropriate communication. The examples given are asking for secrets to be kept, using sexual language the child may not understand, and educating the child on the subject.
So when it comes to this part of the definition, you're going to struggle quite a bit to swerve it, if that makes sense. So let's see how you handle it.
I will not deny that my conversations were inappropriate and I shouldn't have been having them, to begin with.
Well, this is marvellous. You've admitted it. It took you a few minutes within your video to get to that point. You should have led with this part. You should have led with that and ended the video. Honestly, 30 plus minutes. I know there are mental gymnastics in this. You know it as well. This is tragic. I wonder what you say next. Was a sarcasm sign required for that?
The only instance of me asking them to keep something a secret would be me saying to them, please don't tell the public I'm depraved.
While never explicitly requested to keep much of the art you shared a secret, you did share that stuff with people, and I don't recall seeing much of it in the public eye until I was informed of its existence, much of which in Google document form was censored, because only sad pathetic virgins share RAPE fantasies in art form with 14-year-olds.
I never intended to keep our relationship a secret. That was never even something I was intending to hide. It was also never my intention to educate Enno on any particular, sex... I don't know. Now that I think about it, majority of the inappropriate conversations we had revolved around sadomasochism and, sadistic fantasies, not really sex.
Would I be right to assume you didn't give much thought to the fact that both can become mutually exclusive within the realm of the sex? And that with the art you did in fact share, that they saw, and some of the conversations you had in the Google Docs I pinned in yesterday's video, because I couldn't show it because OBS had a fail, that by definition you had in fact been having inappropriate conversations around them, with them. Maybe not to entice or lure them in, but still conversations you should not have been having. In fact, I'd argue not one conversation was appropriate, and you may not have intended to hide the relationship, the friendship as it were, right? But you did. Your intention and reality don't line up. There's a reason for that. I wonder if you're honest enough to say it.
Sex was definitely brought up, but it was never my intention to educate Enno about it.
After yesterday's mitigating disaster at trying to share OBS recorded parts, I'm going to put on the screen for you, hopefully you can see it, the comments section. Later on within this, some point out that you've also been called out for doing it in 2021-2022 with another person who was also underage. The comments aren't on your side in the slightest. Many are being picky, many pointing out what you claim to be intellectual property actually belong to other people. It gets quite messy. Just thought I'd point it out. Before we continue to the next point about buying gifts.
Buying gifts or giving gifts. Didn't do that. Eno actually made like a ton of gifts for me, but I don't think I've ever made anything in return, which saying out loud makes me feel kind of...
Yes, do again try to imagine my shock. The 14-year-old seeking validation in this context would want to seek your validation by giving you gifts. And if you feel guilty for not sending them gifts in the context of that, chances are you thought too much of the relationship you had with Eno at the time. One that should have been non-existent. Maybe you should have just made a wish list and left it at that. Or simply had an email where you could accept fan art. How about that?
Now, I did ask them to make things for me a lot. The most inappropriate thing I think I've asked was for, like, a comic. I'm not gonna pretend I'm justified for doing that. No, I think it was inappropriate. Fucking cringy. But everything else I can think of was mostly just ship art.
The fascinating thing about your response so far is that you're being very, very particular about obeying the rules of the definitions of words. Yet, you've had to concede points that undo your explanations. That's what you've done throughout. Every time you've then conceded, everything you said prior was pointless. Therefore, you didn't need to say it at all.
Giving the child special attention. Examples given are singling out the child to make them feel more mature, special, or different from other children. The
Query, does sharing drawn, naked, sexual fantasies with a minor count?
The fact that I was talking to Eno at all could be seen as me giving them special attention.
It is. And there's no version of any reality that could ever exist or does exist where you could justify it.
But not once did I ever tell them that I thought they were more mature, special, or different.
I don't think that helps your case. Because again, 300 pages. It may not seem like special attention by the standards you set, but they, vulnerable and alone, will undoubtedly regard it as such. I will again, for those who are interested, link both Google Docs down below. Both are quite damning. Bring popcorn.
The only example I can think of is toward the beginning of our conversations when I told them they were funny. But I wasn't trying to make them feel like they were different from other kids. Showing particular interest in the child. I wasn't particularly interested in Eno. In fact, I had 2 other friends who I was talking to like this, and they knew that. Cough, Kenny, cough, brother, bitch ass. Victim selection. I did not select them. In fact, they talked to me first.
They may well have spoken to you first, and you may well have had other people in your life at that time, some of whom ages of which have been shown to also be under the age as well, but the overarching point still remains. They may well have reached out, and I get people reaching out to me all the time. I ignore them, or their message requests go unanswered, because I'm not stupid. You still accepted, you still engaged. They then felt special, unique, individual, and you gave that to them, which can be considered a good thing, but you still should have never been speaking to them. And again, it's deflecting away from the core problem. And that's the whole point of this video, isn't it?
Now there's some other things that we really need to discuss when we're talking about this whole grooming situation. So firstly, I am a hetero woman. I am attracted to men, as you can see from these cringy ass conversations that I had with Eno. I did not want to date Eno. I never considered that as an option. I did not reach out to Eno, and it took Eno 3 months of persistently pestering, prying, and giving me gifts before I finally gave in and spoke to them.
You know, that might be the part where you really undid yourself. I don't care that you're hetero. I don't care if you're only interested in manly men. I really don't. I care that you, an adult, conversed with a minor. Apparently your integrity is like a paper bag exposed to the rain. It'll hold for a time, but eventually it will just break because of some stupid neurotic guilt. It does not justify anything. And again, you're deflecting still, and you're trying to make it seem like more responsibility should be on their shoulders. There's a term for that as well. It's called victim blaming.
From the start, I remained very reserved and kept Eno beyond arm's length. I wasn't super interested in talking to them until they sent me an image of me laying in bed, and I made a joke about it being inaccurate because Boy wasn't there. Once Eno started indulging in my very strong autistic infatuation with Boy, that's when I started talking a lot more. And as we kept talking, I felt a lot more comfortable sharing certain things about the character that I liked, including personal fantasies.
Yeah, this is the part where your career's over, really. It doesn't matter what you like, it's who you shared it with. If you say something like, in hindsight, you've lost the argument. It's done. This is you confessing to indulging with a minor on a subject you should have never been having in the first place. But you say it yourself, your autistic mind. Okay, well that's a nice little shield to have, but it turns out it's quite fickle, brittle, and easily breakable. Doesn't matter how your mind operates, you have to have a principle, something ironclad that says, I will not message minors under any circumstances. Yes, bitch.
In hindsight,
LOL.
I really should have filtered myself when talking to this person.
Yes, you should have. By not having any sodding conversations with them in the first place. How is this complicated? Why are people struggling? How are you struggling to get this point into your head? How small is the walnut between your ears?
Definitely should have practiced some restraint. I'm not proud of this, but it was never my intention to desensitize them or harm Enno.
Well, let's see here. Intention, result, consequence. Intention, you did not mean to. Result, you did. Consequence, 300 pages of Google Docs over 2 Google documents. 180 plus came from Enno. They were quite conclusive and destructive. Your name, reputation, channel are in tatters, and this video, your video on your channel part 1 response, that is broken up into multiple videos, apparently, although I've yet to see the rest yet, and the videos themselves into multiple segments, serves as a nail in the coffin for your channel and everything you apparently are.
That was never on my mind. I imagine that's fairly obvious if the DMs are actually read with more than one brain cell activated.
So I took the liberty of going through those DMs, and I highly recommend everyone do the same. You can draw your own conclusions. There is a point there. There really is. However, the overarching point nullifies all of it, because you should have never been having those conversations to begin with. It can be regarded as an exhausting read, so if you want to make it easy for yourself, go into it thinking it's another Harry Potter novel. Except in this one, Dumbledore was sending inappropriate images to Harry. Jokes aside, you can read those messages and take what you want from it. That's where the text part is a problem. Surely something you, with your 2 brain cells, may well be able to understand. If you cannot convey tone in text form, context can also be lost. Even with messages laid bare, it can be taken in multiple different ways by those who are seeking to go into it, even if they want to be neutral with a form of confirmation bias. You believe that they exonerate you. I believe they're another nail in the coffin, quite frankly.
I've been speaking to some individuals who are very critical of me, but they've been fair. They disagreed with the idea that this was grooming because one of them, who goes by Kumo, thought something was off about the evidence that was used to back up the claim. Kumo has been very critical of child predators and people who enact performative vigilante justice online for validation or personal gain. It was explained to me that my understanding of grooming was clearly warped, and these conversations just sounded like, I'm quoting Kumo, locker room girl talk.
Kumo, the YouTuber, have done 2 streams talking about whether or not you're a groomer or Birdie is a scammer. They have been resoundingly slapped down by the internet over this one. The court of public opinion with regards to those live streams is not on their side, but it's good that you would engage with your detractors on this subject matter. It again, though, does not help with what has transpired, because the information, even with the 1 brain cell I use, because I'm not smart enough to understand more than that, shows that you are on the wrong side of history, and your deflective tactics have not served you well in this video in the slightest. I'm going to end this video here because I know soon you're going to start talking about Birdie, and that's a separate topic, a separate Google Doc as well. I do want to know what you all think. Again, I'll link the Google documents down below if you're interested. Read them, both of them. Enno's, and I think the other one is Birdie, isn't it? I may have forgotten who the second one was by. Digest the information in your own time if you wish, but it is a lot to take in, and I don't know if it's worth the hassle to go through all of that. I'm intrigued to see what you do with part 2, and what the court of public opinion continues to think, and how this impacts your channel, because I'd like to see how you recover from it. How is not an indicator that I want, because I don't.